Chapter 68-20. Most of the array formation masters present were people who had studied for a long time. If they did not have a certain number of years, they would not have the chance to come and participate either. These 1,000 over array formation masters were the most outstanding array formation masters in the first place. The top 100 were even the pinnacle. Not being able to enter was expected. When the competition ends later, don't reveal a look of pity either. It's not a big deal, understand? Young Han reminded. To young people, failure was nothing scary. Losing confidence was the scariest. Don't worry, Dad. We know. Yang Qinxue said seriously. Fourth place, Wanshui City's Jiang Haian. When this name appeared, Shen Duanyu's expression changed instantly. This was his eldest senior brother. Not seeing him for a while, he did not expect that his eldest senior brother's array formation skills actually improved so much. Recalling that Zhen Gudao had once said before that he would wait until the day before the competition to give them pointers, it was very clear that his eldest senior brother passed through this round of pointers, which was why he had such results. Fourth place. Although the 4th and 10th place were both in the top 10, the difference between them was like heaven and earth. When Zhen Gudao saw this ranking, a trace of astonishment flashed across his face, seemingly somewhat puzzled. Master Zhen, a great teacher indeed produces a great disciple. Jiang Haihan's array formation skills are really getting more and more outstanding now. Qin Jian congratulated with a smile. Zhen Gudao swiftly covered up the hesitation on his face, revealing a joyful smile on his face. He's always been more hardworking. That's also because Master Zhen taught him well. Facing everyone's compliments, the smile on Zhen Gudao's face also continued to widen. His gaze turned to Ning Tian by the side. The person that someone wants to protect in such a high-profile manner actually didn't even enter the top 100. Qin Jian and the other two masters' gazes also involuntarily turned to Ning Tian. This matter caused an uproar. They naturally all knew about it too. It was just that they thought that someone who could be valued so highly by the two masters should at least enter the top 100. They did not expect that he actually did not even cause a ripple. Ning Tian's expression was cold, as if he did not care at all. Don't you think about how many years you've taught this disciple of yours? I haven't taught anything yet. Wait until the next competition to say these words. Hearing that, everyone's expression changed slightly. Thinking about it carefully, that was indeed the case. It was just that everyone could not help but be a little disappointed. Zhen Gudao didn't mind seeing Ning Tian's appearance. In any case, he had already lost face. It was just that this guy liked to put on a brave front. Master Fan, your son Fan Ziheng has entered the top 3 this time. Who knows, he might even be able to take first place. Zhen Gudao smiled as he congratulated Fan Xian. Fan Xian had been famous for a long time, and could be said to be a highly respected array master. His son was also very outstanding in array techniques. Almost everyone knew Fan Ziheng's name. This time, they were aiming for first place. A smile appeared on Fan Xian's face as well. That might not be the case. There might even be some dark horses. In my view, Fan Ziheng is the true dark horse, Zhen Gudao said with a smile. You really know how to flatter. Ning Tian said coldly. The reason why he and Zhen Gudao did not see eye to eye was because this guy always acted like a bootlicker, which was extremely irritating to look at. Zhen Gudao's face darkened, and even Fan Xian's expression was slightly awkward, faintly revealing slight displeasure. Chapter 68-21. Shen Xing glanced at Ning Tian and shook his head slightly, indicating that he didn't need to care about this. They were very clear about Beichen's talent. The other party was looking for trouble now, because there was nothing they could do. If they were to take it seriously, they would be at a disadvantage instead. Zhen Gudao saw that Ning Tian finally shut his mouth, and a trace of pride appeared on his face. He finally managed to talk this guy down. Third place, Qianma City's Fan Ziheng. On the ranking list, the name of the third place was already displayed. Seeing this name, Zhen Gudao was also a little surprised. According to his judgment, Fan Ziheng should have won first place this time. Fan Ziheng was different from Shen Duanyu. Shen Duanyu was carefully groomed after being discovered by him, while Fan Ziheng learned array techniques from Fan Xian from a young age. Over the years, Fan Zihong's reputation was extremely resounding. Even before the competition began, in everyone's hearts, he was already the first place by default. However, in this first round, Fan Zihong was actually only third place. Fan Xian's expression suddenly changed a little, and there was a thick sense of doubt in the depths of his eyes. Could it be that Fan Zihong performed abnormally in the first round of the competition? Logically speaking, the first round of the competition was the easiest. Not only was there plenty of time, there was also time to create the second and third array stones, and choose the best one from them. Such a problem shouldn't have occurred. On the high platform, the gazes of many array masters also fell on Fan Zihong. This was clearly an aberration. I really didn't expect Fan Zihong to actually be third place this time. I wonder which two people actually surpass Fan Zihong. These two people are incredible. How resounding is Fan Zihong's reputation? Even Jiang Haihan can't compare to him at all. Now these two people are stepping on Fan Zihong's reputation. Won't they soar to the sky? The rankings of those famous people have already been released. I'm really curious. Everyone's faces were filled with curiosity, although the rankings at the back were more difficult to guess. For the top 10, everyone basically had a judgment in their hearts. The results this time were clearly somewhat different from their judgment. Not only the spectators present, even the 5 masters had some doubts in their hearts. It seemed that 2 very outstanding dark horses had indeed appeared in this array master competition. This kind of situation was not unprecedented in the history of the array master competition, so everyone could still accept it. Second place, Bailey Hongzhuang of Qingyang City. The moment this name appeared on the ranking list, the entire venue fell into a deathly silence. Yang Lingfeng's gaze was fixated on those familiar words. He felt that he recognized those words, but when they were put together, why couldn't he believe it? He rubbed his eyes hard, and found that the words on the ranking board did not change. He could not help but ask, "Sister, am I seeing things?" Yang Qinxue looked confused. "I think my eyes are playing tricks on me too." Bai Qingli, is there something wrong with our eyes? Bai Ziyuan was also stunned for a long time. It wasn't until he reacted that he put his hand on Yang Han's shoulder. "Brother Yang, you really have a discerning eye this time. How is it that Hong Zhuang doesn't know array techniques? If he really didn't know how could he have gotten second place?" Even Fan Zihong was suppressed. Chapter 68-22. They all knew very well that Hong Zhuang's choice to participate in the Array Formation Master competition, this time, was completely beyond her ability. From the beginning until now, she actually had no intention of participating. If Fan Guangshuan had not left, Bailey Hongzhuang would not have participated at all. However, it was this kind of person who had no confidence in her array formation skills that actually obtained second place? Was this a joke? Shen Duanyu was completely dumbfounded. He could not believe the words on the ranking list at all. Bailey Hongzhuang was second place? An alchemist had obtained second place? There was something wrong with the detector, right? Qin Jian, Zhen Gudao, and the rest all fell silent. The entire venue was incomparably quiet. Their first reaction was not shock, but suspicion that there was something wrong with the detector. City Lord Qin, has this detector not been repaired for a long time? Zhen Gudao asked. Qin Jian thought about it and shook his head. It can't be. For this competition, I even sent people to specially check it a while ago. Logically speaking, there shouldn't be any problems. That's impossible. There must be a problem. Zhen Gudao's voice was certain. How can an alchemist obtain second place? I was saying that Sir Fan's ranking was not quite right. So it was a problem with the detector. Fan Xian nodded slightly, and his expression looked better. If his own son lost to an alchemist in array formation skills, wouldn't it become a joke if word got out? Ning Tian and Shen Xing looked at each other. In the face of everyone's confirmation, the two of them did not open their mouths to refute, because this result was indeed a little too fantastical. Why don't I send someone to check it? Qin Jian said hesitantly. In the Array Formation Master competition, that was held once every 10 years, if such a problem occurred in the grading, it would indeed be quite terrible. Zhen Gudao nodded repeatedly. This has to be cleared up before we can give everyone justice. Ning Tian, the heavens might have seen that you've lost all your face, so they purposely gave you a surprise. Zhen Gudao laughs softly. Unfortunately, this is a fake surprise. Ning Tian glanced coldly at the smug Zhen Gudao, his eyes full of displeasure. However, looking at the ranking list above, he was somewhat puzzled. If there really was a problem with the detector, then wasn't this too much of a coincidence? Miss Bailey, you're second place? Even Shi Hai's words were a little shaky. He had studied array formation skills for so many years, but had never interacted with an array master in the top 10. Who would have thought that Bailey Hongzhuang, whom he was worried about just a moment ago, would suddenly become second place? Bailey Hongzhuang was also somewhat puzzled. She really had not communicated with others about array techniques, and she had no understanding of her own level of array techniques. If Bei Chun is in first place, then I might be in second place. Bailey Hongzhuang was a little hesitant. She had also heard the discussion between the masters. It seemed like there was a problem with the detector. At this time, the first place, Qingyang City's Di Bei Chun. Along with the mention of this name, everyone was once again shocked. Their expressions became very interesting. Qingyang City is really amazing this time. They didn't even make it into the top 100 before, but now both first and second place are from Qingyang City. How impressive is that? No wonder Master Ning and Master Shen are so protective of them. This kind of strength is really too shocking. Chapter 68-23. Yang Qinxue. Who am I? Yang Lingfeng. Where am I? Yang Han. What am I doing? Bai Ziyuan and Bai Qingli looked at the Yang family members who had completely fallen into a daze with complex emotions. If something like this had happened to them, they probably wouldn't have performed any better, right? Brother Yang. Brother Yang. Bai Ziyuan waved his hand in front of Yang Lingfeng's eyes. Only then did Yang Lingfeng come to his senses, his face still filled with disbelief. Ever since I came to this small world, I feel like I've been hit by a pie in the sky, Yang Han lamented. He hadn't had such good luck in so many years, and now it had all fallen on his head. It was like falling into a dream, and even his footsteps were a little weak. Zhen Gudao's expression was also a little strange. If there really was a malfunction, could it really be so coincidental? Shen Xing and Ning Tian also didn't say anything. In this situation, they couldn't make any conclusions. There might be some malfunction with the detector. I'll send someone to check it first. In the face of the extremely strange atmosphere, Qin Jian still took the initiative to state this possibility. If there really was a problem, then the rankings would have to be redone. Following Qin Jian's words, everyone felt the hand that was strangling their throats dissipate, and they were able to speak again. So it's because of the detector. I was wondering how they could get such a good ranking. What kind of people are Fan Ziheng and Jiang Haiyan? It would be strange if these two newcomers could surpass them. That scared me to death. But it was such a big surprise. And because of a malfunction, wouldn't it be a joke if they didn't enter the top 100 when the rankings are redone? Mocking voices sounded one after another. Everyone was looking forward to the rankings of the first stage. Shen Duanyu also heaved a sigh of relief. I was wondering how these two guys could get such a result. If even an alchemist could get second place, then it would be a joke. His heart was in his mouth just now, and now that he knew everything was fake, he was completely relieved. Don't worry, Di Beichun's array skills can't compare to yours. On the other side, after Fan Ziheng heard the results, his originally stiff face regained a smile. He was determined to get first place this time. Yang Qinxue and the others were a little disappointed after learning about this result, but they quickly recovered. In fact, this result was easier to accept. If everything was true, then it would be really shocking. For a moment, Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang became the target of ridicule. The result was too dramatic. Before long, Qin Jian returned to the martial arts arena. Zhen Gudao was the first to speak. City Lord Qin, has the detector been repaired? Shall we begin the re-examination now? Qin Jian nodded slightly. I've already checked it again, but I don't think there's anything wrong with the detector. However, to be fair, we can try it again now. How could there possibly be no problem? Zhen Gudao laughed lightly, clearly not believing it. The detector has been fixed. There are no problems now, so we'll start the test again. Chapter 68-24. These two kids are really unlucky. It was nothing at first, but now that something like this has happened, everyone will compare them instead. Shenxing sighed. He was starting to wonder if Zhen Gudao was behind all of this in order to make trouble for them. Previously they were in the top 2. If they didn't even enter the top 100, wouldn't they become everyone's laughingstock? I hope this isn't Zhen Gudao's doing. Otherwise, I'll let him know what regret is. Ning Tian narrowed her eyes and glanced coldly at Zhen Gudao. This guy had always been dishonest and haggled over the smallest details. It was inevitable that he would stir up trouble behind their backs. Rankings appeared one after another on the ranking board. 100th place, Luo Immortal City's Duan Jing. 99th place, Clearwater City's Luo Xiangqing. The cultivators who still appeared on the ranking board couldn't help but sigh in relief when they saw the rankings. At least they had entered the top 100. However, as the rankings increased, they realized that the order was no different from before. My ranking hasn't changed. Isn't it still the same as before? Mine too. It hasn't changed at all. 10th place, Wanshui City's Shen Duanyu. Shen Duanyu frowned when he saw the familiar rankings. He was hoping that his ranking would move up a little, but he didn't expect it to be the same. Most importantly, he couldn't help but panic when he saw that the rankings hadn't changed at all. 4th place, Wanshui City's Jiang Haian. 3rd place, Qianma City's Fan Zihong. In the blink of an eye, only the last 2 were left. 2nd place, Qingyang City's Bailey Hongzhuang. 1st place, Qingyang City's Bewitching. Everyone looked at each other in dismay, their expressions becoming very strange. City Lord Qin, are you sure this detector is fixed? Zhen Gudao couldn't help but ask. Qin Jian nodded slightly. I'm sure there's no problem. Impossible. There must be a problem somewhere. Zhen Gudao's attitude was firm. This was an absolutely impossible result. Qin Jian frowned when he saw this. I've already checked this detector several times. I'm sure there's no problem. If Master Zhen doesn't believe me, you can check it yourself. Ning Tian's eyes lit up when she saw Qin Jian's confident expression. In that case, the rankings are real. It's just that some people don't want to believe it. The excitement in Shenxing's eyes was also difficult to conceal. He had long known that the strength of that expert's disciple was definitely not simple. However, such a ranking still somewhat surprised him. This was simply too unbelievable. Although the first stage was just a basic array formation, as array formation masters, they knew very well that the basics were the most important. There must be a problem. Zhen Gudao's attitude was resolute. He turned his head to look at Fan Xian. Master Fan, we need to go check it out together. At this moment, Ning Tian waved her hand. If you don't want to believe it, you won't believe it no matter how hard you try to fix it. At the end of the day, aren't you guys just doubting the strength of the top 2? Isn't that simple? You just have to take out the formation stones crafted by the top 4, and we'll know once we judge. Chapter 68-25. Rather than that, they might as well directly examine the formation stones of these 4 people. As long as there was no doubt about it, it would prove that there was nothing wrong with the detector. Looking at Ning Tian's confident appearance, Zhen Gudao also had some doubts in his heart. However, he did not believe that Bewitching and Bailey Hongzhuang would be so evil. There was definitely a problem. Let's do that, Zhen Gudao said with a nod. Fan Xian was also very much in agreement. This matter had to be clarified. Seeing that the 5 masters had already made their decision, Qin Jian immediately announced to everyone. Because everyone has doubts about the strength of the top few people, we will now take out the formation stones of the top 4 for the 5 masters to personally examine. Although Qin Jian's words were polite, everyone present knew that these so-called doubts were merely doubts about Bewitching and Bailey Hongzhuang's results. However, this was also the same doubt in everyone's hearts, so they were very supportive. This formation stone is going to be interesting. If Bewitching and the others really have such a ranking, then they will really soar to the sky. Do you guys think that Bewitching did something to the detector? Now that the 5 masters are examining it together, This kind of small trick will be directly exposed. In my opinion, there should be a problem with the detector. Everyone shook their heads. Everyone still did not believe that Bewitching and the others could have such a result. If Bailey Hongzhuang was very doubtful at the beginning, then now after re-examining and discovering that the rankings were still the same, she was relieved. Senior Zhong Li's reputation was indeed not in vain. The formation skills that he taught them were really extraordinary. Bewitching very casually pulled Bailey Hongzhuang to the side and sat down. Zheng Gudao won't give up so easily. Let's wait for them to examine it. Seeing that Bewitching was not worried at all, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly and said, "We seem to have underestimated Senior Zhong Li's strength. Could it be that he used to be a very powerful formation master in the Immortal Region? When we reach the Immortal Region we will know." Bewitching smiled faintly. These seniors all came from the Celestial Realm, so he would understand them better there. Soon, 4 array stones appeared before Ning Tian and the others. Everyone's eyes fell on the 5 masters, wondering what the results of the test would be. The 5 masters did not start from the first place. Instead, they started from Jiang Haihan's array stone. He is indeed very outstanding. Fan Xian inspected Jiang Haihan's array stone. He had already taken note of all the important points of a first-grade array stone. There were only a few minor flaws. In fact, apart from the experienced array masters, almost all young array masters had these questions. Although Ning Tian was very unhappy with Zheng Gudao, he had to admit that Jiang Haihan's attainments in array techniques were not bad. This array stone was made very well. Master Fan's array stone is undoubtedly of a better quality. It even avoids some minor problems, and its effects are even stronger. Zheng Gudao had a look of admiration on his face. After seeing this formation stone, he was even more certain that there was something wrong with the detector. At this level, even the first-grade array stones that they made would not be much better. Just based on Bewitching and Bailey Hongzhuang, how could they be the top 2? Chapter 68-26. Grandmaster Zhen, you praise me too much. Fan Xian looked modest, but the smile at the corners of his eyes could not be concealed. His son had always made him proud, and there was no need to say more about the effort he had put into this formation stone. I'm telling the truth. Zheng Gudao was all smiles. Let me see what the formation stone made by this stunning second-place finisher looks like. Zheng Gudao picked up the formation stone, made by Bailey Hongzhuang, and examined it. However, the moment he examined it, his expression immediately stiffened and became complicated. Shen Xing and Ning Tian were originally a little worried, but when they saw the sudden change in Zheng Gudao's expression, they could not help but hesitate. Could it be? Grandmaster Zhen, what's wrong? Fan Xian could not help but ask when he saw that Zheng Gudao did not move at all, his expression as if he had seen a ghost. Zheng Gudao did not speak, and only silently handed the formation stone to Fan Xian. His expression alternated between green and white, and became extremely complicated. Fan Xian picked up the formation stone to examine it, and his hand could not help but tremble. His expression was not much different from Zheng Gudao's. Grandmaster Fan, what's going on? Qin Jian was only a layman, but when he saw the 2 grandmasters' extremely strange expressions, his heart was also filled with curiosity. What was wrong with this formation stone? After a brief daze, a slightly bitter smile appeared on Fan Xian's face. This second-place finisher really lives up to her reputation. Ning Tian and Shen Xing were originally wondering if there was a problem, but when they suddenly heard this sentence, their expressions also became very interesting. They quickly took Bailey Hongzhuang's formation stone, and with a glance, they discovered the problem. The formation stone made by Bailey Hongzhuang had already completely resolved those small problems. Even if the other party wanted to break this formation, the time they would need to spend would be much greater than that of an ordinary first-rank formation. Even if they were to do it, they would not be able to make a better one. An alchemist could actually make a formation stone of this level. Zheng Gudao only felt his face burning. What was wrong with this group of people? Wasn't it good to be an alchemist? Why did he have to run all the way here to participate in the Formation Master Tournament? Not only did he participate, he even achieved such a result. Recalling how he had confidently said that there must be something wrong with the detector, he felt his face hurt. An excited smile appeared on Ning Tian's face. Looks like this Bailey girl is really a genius. Not only is she an excellent alchemist, but she's also an outstanding array master. She's just like me. He had two professions to begin with, and because of this matter, he was often criticized by others. But later on, he used his strength to prove everything, and only then did everyone shut their mouths. He didn't expect that there would be such an interesting character among the younger generation, which made him very happy. When Qin Jian heard Master Fan's words, he couldn't help but sigh. So it was true. Since the array stone in second place is already so outstanding, what about the array stone in first place? As soon as these words came out, the eyes of Ning Tian and the others fell on the last array stone. Even they couldn't imagine how Di Beichen's array stone was better than Bailey Hongzhuang's. Chapter 68-27. Although Zhen Gudao and the others hadn't checked Di Beichen's array stone yet, they could tell from Xin Xing's amazed expression that Di Beichen deserved the first place. Let me take a look. Ning Tian was also very interested. He directly took the array stone from Xin Xing's hand and examined it carefully. He knew that Di Beichen's ingenuity in the field of array stones was much better than the young array masters he usually saw. For example, the last time Di Beichen made a trap array. Overall, the process of making it was not very complicated. What was complicated was how he thought of how to superimpose these arrays. Although the basic array techniques were the same, most array masters were only good at common array techniques. In fact, array techniques could be innovated and layered. It was just that many array masters couldn't do this. In fact, array masters who could layer array techniques were often people with extraordinary talent. Di Beichen had just learned array techniques not long ago, but he could layer array techniques and achieve such an effect. This in itself was very amazing. After checking Di Beichen's array stone, Ning Tian's expression was similar to Xin Xing's. This performance really surprised them. Not only did they not find any problems with this first-grade array stone, but on the contrary, it was stronger than other array stones of the same level. It was stronger than the one made by Bailey Hongzhuang. These two are really a pair. The effect of the elixir refined by Bailey Hongzhuang is stronger than usual, and the array stone made by this kid is stronger than usual. What a perfect match. Ning Tian smiled, and the corners of his eyes couldn't help but curve upward. This was really a surprise. At this moment, Fan Xian also abandoned his original opinion of Beichen and Xin Xing. In the face of a truly talented array master, he still admired them very much. Although this kind of result blocked Fan Ziheng's path, even he couldn't say anything bad about the array stone made. Shen Duanyu had been paying attention to the changes in the expressions of the five masters. He only hoped that there was a problem with the detector. Otherwise, if this was really the result, how could he live? However, when he saw Zhen Gudao's increasingly ugly expression, a bad premonition gradually rose in his heart. In contrast, Ning Tian and Xin Xing were extremely elated. Could it be that the results were real? When Zhen Gudao personally examined the formation stones created by Di Beichen, his heart was also filled with shock. To be able to create such a high level of array formation, it was impossible to say that there was no expert guiding them from behind. Although it was only a first-grade array stone, because it was too common, it was very difficult to make a first-grade array stone surpass others. If it was said that a grassroots array master could achieve this, it would be no different from a fantasy. Even if he was a genius, it was still impossible for him to do so. Thinking back to Shen Xing and Ning Tian's attitude, could it be that this seemingly ordinary Di Beichen was actually the disciple of some expert? The more Zhen Gudao thought about it, the more he felt that his judgment was correct. Previously, when he heard Shen Duanyu mention the expert that Shen Xing recognized, he only took it as a joke and didn't take it seriously at all. Now, it appeared that all of this was true. It was no wonder that Shen Xing and Shen Ying's attitudes had undergone such a drastic change. Otherwise, even if they were extremely optimistic about Tang Wulin, there was no way that they would say something like this when Tang Wulin had yet to achieve any results. Chapter 68-28. Grandmaster Zhen, you've already personally inspected this array stone. You shouldn't have any doubts about this result, right? Ning Tian was all smiles as she looked at Jin Gudao. This smile that was as brilliant as a peach blossom was simply dazzling to the extreme in his eyes. If there's any problem, it's better for you to check it clearly now. Otherwise, if there's any doubt later, wouldn't that be troublesome? Zhen Gudao looked at Ning Tian with a malicious gaze. This guy could be said to have turned over a new leaf, and was very pleased with himself. This array stone was right there. Even if he wanted to find fault with it, he couldn't. Wasn't he just trying to squeeze him by saying this? No, Zhen Gudao said sullenly. The smile on Ning Tian's face became even more pleased. Previously, I don't know who it was that we valued who didn't have any ability at all. As a person, you can't be too full of yourself. Otherwise, retribution will come too quickly. That would be very embarrassing. When he said this, Ning Tian didn't look at him. But everyone present knew very well that Ning Tian was talking about Zhen Gudao. Zhen Gudao's face was already as black as the bottom of a pot. He knew that this guy definitely didn't have anything good to say. Who asked him to be so close? Now Ning Tian was just taking revenge on him. On the side, Fan Xian was also silent. Who would have thought that there would be such a contrast in the end? Even he found it hard to believe. After seeing that the 5 grandmasters had confirmed this result without a doubt, Qin Jian stood up and announced, after the 5 grandmasters' confirmation, the results on the ranking board are the correct results. Congratulations to the array masters on the board. Following Qin Jian's words, the scene first fell into a momentary silence, which was quickly followed by bursts of exclamations. My God, this result is actually real. I told you Bewitching and the others are capable, right? You guys were still refuting me just now. Now you know who's speaking the truth. The cultivators who were originally squeezed out by everyone, because they spoke up for Bewitching and Ning Tian, suddenly felt as if they had turned over a new leaf. All their grievances were swept away at this moment. The feeling of exultation made them feel refreshed. When they looked at Bewitching and Ning Tian again, they only felt that they were more pleasing to the eye. The more they looked, the more they worshipped them. Who would have thought that this would be the result? These are really 2 dark horses. Everyone else also turned around, although they felt their faces hurt when they said this. Sis hit me. I feel like I'm hallucinating. I'm not rational anymore. Yang Lingfeng turned his head with a blank expression. Although he had heard everything clearly, why did he feel that it was so unreal? Pa! Yang Qinxue slapped Yang Lingfeng's shoulder hard. Hiss! The sharp pain from his shoulder caused Yang Lingfeng to grimace in pain. Just as he was about to complain about his sister's ruthlessness, he saw his sister looking at him expectantly. How is it? Does it hurt? Does it not hurt? Do you want me to hit you again? Stop, stop, stop. Yang Lingfeng grabbed Yang Qinxue's hand. It's so painful. Can't you see your brother's expression? Yang Qinxue stared at Yang Lingfeng for a moment. I saw it, but I still don't believe it. Bai Qingli looked at the siblings who had completely lost their composure, and a helpless smile appeared on her face. He also found this result hard to believe, but these 2 guys. Chapter 68-29. It's actually true. Ah! It's really true. Yang Lingfeng and Yang Qinxue couldn't help but jump on the spot. This was simply too exciting. Although it was only the first stage, their Qingyang city had never produced a top 100 in all these years, let alone the first stage. This time it was actually first and second place. This was simply like a dream. From now on, Beichen is my god. Hong Zhuang even said that she didn't know how to do it. If she can get second place even though she doesn't know how to do it, wouldn't she be heaven-defying? Yang Han looked at the siblings who had completely gone crazy. Not only did he not have any intention of reprimanding them, he was also in a state of ecstasy. The ups and downs were simply too great. Even he didn't dare to believe that all of this was real. He was even worried that after a while, someone would say that there was a problem with all of this. However, his rationality told him that the 5 masters had already personally examined the results. It was impossible for there to be any changes in the results. Bai Ziyuan also sighed. When all of this was confirmed to be true, He felt as if he had fallen into a dream. Although the first stage was the stage that Bewitching and Qinxue were the most proficient in, it would be more difficult for them to achieve good results in the remaining two stages, because they had only studied formations for a short period of time. However, just obtaining a place in this stage was enough for them to be proud of. Everyone knew very well that as long as they could continue to maintain this, their results in the future would definitely not be bad. Beichen and Qinxue are too modest. Bai Qingli couldn't help but sigh. This standard was enough to be proud of, but from the beginning to the end, they didn't show the slightest bit of arrogance. It was to the extent that they really felt that their formations weren't strong enough. Yang Lingfeng's face was filled with excitement. Shen Duanyu was still hooting about competing with Beichen. A 10th place actually has the nerve to hoot about the first place. Beichen couldn't even be bothered with him, alright? Bai Qingli smiled and nodded. Ever since Lingfeng's injuries had healed, his temperament had really changed quite a bit. Shen Duanyu's face had long turned green. That dazzling first place was like a huge slap that directly slapped him to the ground. He didn't even dare to look at Beichen, but he still felt uneasy. Didn't you say that Beichen has no strength at all? You're lying, right? I don't think you're from Qingyang City at all. Are you Shen Duanyu's lackey? Are you deliberately speaking ill of Beichen and the others? Isn't this person a little too vicious? Recently, quite a few people have believed his words. Below the high platform, many people turned their gazes towards Fan Guangshuan. Fan Guangshuan was the one who had been the most ridiculous when talking about this matter, causing them to believe him. Now that the other party had used his strength to prove everything, they realized that they had been tricked. Fan Guangshuan's face alternated between green and white. Faced with everyone's disdainful gazes, he only wished that he could dig a hole in the ground and hide. Damn Beichen. He clearly has such strength, yet he pretends that he doesn't. It's all for the sake of luring people into a trap. He's absolutely detestable. Chapter 68:30. The next two stages will be more difficult for us. Bailey Hung Zhuang looked at the array masters worriedly. She had already heard Lord Yang say that in addition to the first level, which every array master could do, the other two levels also had certain requirements for the array master's grade. The second stage was slightly better, especially the third stage, which was undoubtedly the most difficult stage. In this regard, Bailey Hung Zhuang was also clear in her heart. Perhaps Beichen still had a chance to fight, but she obviously had no chance at all. Fortunately, she had pulled quite a lot of points from the first stage, so she did not have to worry for now. Don't think too much, this result is already very good. Beichen's voice was gentle, and his eyes shone with thousands of stars. Really? Bailey Hung Zhuang asked with a smile. Beichen nodded. You've always been great. Bailey Hung Zhuang's worry disappeared with Beichen's praise. It was as if as long as she was by his side, everything else was not a problem. Not long after the first stage ended, Qin Jian announced the start of the second stage. For the second stage of the Array Master competition, every Array Master will create the strongest array within their abilities. The specific type of array will be decided by the 5 Masters, and I will pick it randomly. Hearing this question, a trace of helplessness appeared between Bailey Hung Zhuang's brows. Although she had not participated in the Array Master competition, she could vaguely determine her own ability after understanding it during this period of time. If her judgment was correct, she should be a second-grade Array Master. Beichen was slightly better than her, and should be a third-grade Array Master. In this competition, one's own grade was undoubtedly very important. It was just like how the effects of a second-grade Array Stone could not be stronger than a third-grade Array Stone. Therefore, she was just there to accompany him in this stage. However, she did not know what grade the Array Masters were, and whether Beichen could achieve a good result. Just as Bailey Hung Zhuang was thinking, Qin Jian had already picked the topic. Trap Array. All Array Masters, please create the strongest trapping array within your capabilities. Hearing this topic, Yang Qinxue and the others' eyes lit up. According to their understanding, Master Ning had previously praised Beichen's trap array. This at least proved that Beichen's trap array was extremely good. Otherwise he would not have been praised by Master Ning. Compared to the other topics, this topic undoubtedly made everyone feel more at ease. This is simply shady. Shen Duanyu secretly spat when he heard the question. He knew that Bei Chen was very good at this. He had been praying that the question of trapping array would not come up, but it just had to be this question. How could he not be suspicious? Bei Chen go. Bailey Hong Zhuang's lips curved into a smile. Even though she couldn't beat others in terms of rank, she believed that with Bei Chen's strength, no one in the same rank could compare to him. The duration of the competition is still 1 hour. Now, let the competition begin. Once this was said, the array masters present immediately began to move. Bailey Hongzhuang calmed down, and after thinking for a moment, she made up her mind to start. Her array master level was not high, but she had always been very serious when learning. As long as she could create the best array she could. Chapter 6831. Compared to the almost non-existent failure rate in the first round, the failure rate in the second round had undoubtedly increased by quite a bit. Everyone wanted to create a formation stone that was at the peak of their skill level, and some even wanted to take the risk and try. In a situation where they were barely able to succeed, the failure rate naturally rose steadily, and the sound of failure could be heard from time to time. I heard that Sir Fan has already become a 4th-rank formation master. After a short rest, Zheng Gudao no longer felt as awkward as before. Even if Di Beichen and the others had a very solid foundation, at least this time, their grade was a serious shortcoming. Fan Xian nodded slightly. This kid just advanced not long ago. To be able to become a 4th-rank formation master at such a young age, your talent is truly amazing. Zheng Gudao smiled as he complimented. Fan Xian also smiled. The first round aside, in this second round, he was confident that no one could be mentioned in the same breath as his son. Your favorite student seems to have advanced as well. He's been studying formations for a longer time than Sir Fan, and he also just advanced not long ago. He can't compare to Sir Fan. Zheng Gudao waved his hand. Although he looked modest, the uncontrollable smile on his face still revealed the joy in his heart. Grandmaster Zhen, your expectations are too high. Sir Jiang can't achieve such results without your careful guidance. Ning Tian didn't say anything else, but his gaze fell on Di Beichen from time to time. He knew very well that this kid's strength wasn't even at 4th rank yet, but his performance was already outstanding enough. If Zheng Gudao wanted to be in the limelight in this aspect, then so be it. He could see that Di Beichen's age was much younger than Jiang Haihan's. Bailey Hongzhuang leisurely created formation stones. Gradually, after more than half the time of the competition had passed, her formation stones were completed. Looking at the formation stones in her hands, she was very satisfied. This was already the highest level of formation she could create at present. After she finished, she immediately turned to look at Di Beichen, who was beside her, and found that he was still creating. His serious profile exuded a mesmerizing charm. Even though she didn't know what kind of formation Beichen was creating, just from those subtle movements, she could tell that Beichen's layering of formations was more complicated than hers. When Shihai noticed that Bailey Hongzhuang had stopped after creating one formation stone, and had no intention of continuing, he didn't remind her. She must have a card up her sleeve, and didn't need to create another one. By the time Di Beichen was done, the end of the competition wasn't far. Dong! The sound of the end of the competition's end. This time, someone collected all the formation stones and put them into the detector. Is this the second round of the second round? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyebrows were slightly raised. This time the array stones were not exactly the same. Could it be that the detector was so strong? In the second round, the formation stones will go through a preliminary screening through the detector. The formation stones with lower scores will be eliminated, and the remaining 300 outstanding formation stones will be appraised by the masters. Otherwise, these 1,000 over formation stones would take a long time for the 5 masters to appraise, Shihai explained. So it's like that. Bailey Hongzhuang understood. Chapter 6832. Di Beichen definitely won't be able to enter the top 100 in this round. Shen Duanyu's eyes flashed with a cold light. Among all the array masters present, only a portion of the top array masters had reached the 4th rank. As far as he knew, Jiang Haihan had only just broken through a while ago. There was no lack of other famous array masters who had broken through as well, but it was definitely very rare. He was now a 3rd rank array master, which was already very good. Bewitching definitely couldn't compare with him in this round. The man on the side also nodded in agreement. Duanyu among the 3 rounds, he only has a slight advantage in the 1st round. With his level, he won't be able to win the other 2 rounds. Shen Duanyu let out a sigh of relief, and his complexion improved a little. The array master competition looked at the total score of the 3 rounds, not just the 1st round. Now he would let Bewitching be proud for a while. It wouldn't be long before he would know what true strength was. The higher you climb, the harder you fall. He wanted to let Bewitching have a taste of this. I think that with Bewitching and Hong Zhuang's results in the 1st round, even if their scores in the later rounds aren't that high, it shouldn't be a problem for them to enter the top 100, right? Yang Lingfeng looked at Bai Qingli. Qingyang City really didn't have any experience in this kind of thing. If they achieved such good results in the 1st round, and still didn't enter the top 100, it would be even sadder than not entering the top 100. Bai Qingli smiled elegantly. Don't worry, they definitely can. That's good, that's good. Yang Lingfeng let out a sigh of relief. This kind of result was really very good for them. I really hope that Bewitching and the others can continue to achieve good results. Yang Qingxue couldn't help but sigh. This time, it had really given them too much of a surprise, so much so that they were a little greedy. Yang Han smiled. Bewitching's time to study is still too short. By the next round of the competition, he'll definitely be an even more dazzling star than Fan Ziheng and the others. Hearing this, Yang Qingxue smiled and nodded. If they had known that Bewitching was so strong, they would have waited until the next competition to let Bewitching fight. At that time, he would definitely shock everyone. However, the current effect was already very good. After waiting for a long time, Qin Jian and the 5 masters finally appeared in front of everyone. After the review of the 5 masters, the results are out. As soon as Qin Jian opened his mouth, what he said was what everyone had been waiting for. For the results of the top 100, please take a look at the rankings. 100th place. On the ranking board, it was still displayed from the last place. However, this so-called last place was still a result that made people incomparably excited. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the names that appeared one by one. Every time a name appeared, she would hear a cry of surprise. Unfortunately, they didn't know much about the participating array masters, so they weren't sure which array masters performed extremely well or performed poorly. 50th place, Bailey Hongzhuang of Qingyang City. Seeing this ranking, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes revealed a trace of surprise. Shi-hai couldn't help but say, "Miss Bailey, perhaps you performed poorly, but this kind of result is already very good." These words were from the bottom of his heart. If he could have such a result, he would wake up laughing in his dreams. Chapter 68-33. Bailey Hongzhuang's brows raised slightly. Did I perform poorly? Shi-hai, with your ability this result. I'm afraid it's not good enough. Bailey Hongzhuang was all smiles. How did I perform poorly? I've completely exceeded my usual standards. She originally thought that with her grade, it would be impossible for her to enter the top 100. After all, there weren't many second-grade array masters in the competition. For her to achieve such a result, it was really too unexpected. If it wasn't for Shi-hai's reminder, she wouldn't have noticed her name appearing. Because from her point of view, the array stone that she created shouldn't have appeared in the top 100. Shi-hai looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's flower-like smile. She was already a beauty, and with such a dazzling smile, it was simply captivating. Just as he was immersed in this smile, he suddenly felt a little cold. As soon as he turned his gaze, he saw Bewitching's eyes that were as cold as a 1,000-years-old lake. He could not help but shudder, and quickly looked away, not daring to look again. At this moment Bewitching was completely like a killing god. Yang Qingxue rubbed her eyes. Why do I think I saw Hong Zhuang's name on the ranking board? You didn't see wrongly, it's real. In order to prevent the incident of hitting people to confirm the authenticity of the matter from happening again, Bai Qingli didn't wait for Yang Lingfeng to reply this time, and took the lead to answer first. Hearing that, Yang Qinxue was stunned and her gaze was sluggish for a moment. When she regained her senses, she couldn't help but jump up on the spot. Heavens! My eyes aren't playing tricks on me. Hong Zhuang actually entered the top 100? Hong Zhuang is simply a genius. Yang Lingfeng was also excited. This is what she meant when she said her ability isn't good enough. Is she really not joking with me? She must be lying to me. But why was she so happy to be cheated? I'd rather be cheated by you 1,000 times, 10,000 times. Yang Qinxue nodded her head. Even if she's lying to us, she's still happy, haha. To think that they had comforted Hong Zhuang in every possible way, telling her not to worry. Now it seemed that they had been overthinking things. With such results in the first 2 rounds, even if the 3rd round hadn't started yet, there was no need to worry. There was definitely a problem with the top 100. Wait, Yang Qinxue regained her senses. If Hong Zhuang is ranked 50th, then Bewitching is. Yang Han and Bai Ziyuan also looked at each other at this moment. They couldn't help but smile, revealing the joy in their hearts. Bewitching's array skills were better than Hong Zhuang's, and they all knew this. Therefore, Bewitching's ranking must be above Hong Zhuang's. I can't. I'm too excited. Yang Lingfeng was beside himself with excitement. Let's see who dares to say that our Qingyang city is no good in the future. Bai Ziyuan really regretted it in his heart. He really didn't agree at that time. Of these 2 people, even if one of them represented their Xi'an city in the competition, it would still be good. This time he could only watch helplessly. However, even if he could only watch helplessly, he was still happy. Are you kidding me? There's definitely something going on behind the scenes. Shen Duanyu couldn't help but explode. It was fine if Bailey Hongzhuang could achieve a good result in the 1st round, but she actually obtained 50th place in the 2nd round? This was simply a fantasy story. This isn't right. Chapter 6834. Bailey Hongzhuang is a pill master. Who would have thought that she would have such a shocking level of skill? This array stone is going to be amazing. Think about how many people mock Qingyang City for being last place every year. Now they're really going to explode. I heard that Bewitching originally didn't intend to participate in the Array Master competition, but because Shen Duanyu made a bet with him, he decided to participate. This is going to be interesting. There was no such thing as an airtight wall in the world. Because Shen Duanyu wanted to suppress Bewitching from the very beginning, he had already spread the news when he had just arrived in the pocket world. Originally, he only wanted to build momentum for himself, but he didn't expect that it would become evidence of Bewitching slapping his face. I wonder how Bewitching's ability is in the 2nd round. I heard that his grade isn't as good as Shen Duanyu's. This array stone is hard to say. We'll know when the results come out. For a moment, everyone was looking forward to this result even more. Don't appear. Don't appear. Shen Duanyu looked at the names that kept appearing and prayed in his heart, hoping that his name would appear a little later. A little later. A little later. Only when Bewitching's name appeared first would he have a chance to turn the tables. However, when there were only 20 names left and Bewitching's name hadn't appeared, Shen Duanyu's heart unconsciously started to panic. Impossible. He kept thinking in his mind. How could a grassroots array master like Bewitching have reached such a standard? 11th place, Wanshui City's Shen Duanyu. Following the appearance of these familiar names, Shen Duanyu's face suddenly became abnormally ugly. Bewitching's ranking was actually higher than his. How could this be? Shen Duanyu sat limply on the chair as if he had lost his soul. This result made him feel even worse than eldest senior brother getting 1st place. 10th place, Qingyang City's Bewitching. Bewitching's name finally appeared on the ranking board. Fan Zihong and the others were relieved to see that Bewitching was only 10th. They were really worried that this guy who had suddenly appeared would steal their limelight again. Although this 10th place was already hard to accept, at least it was not much of a threat to them. Bewitching, you actually got 10th place. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes seemed to be blooming with thousands of flowers, and all the joy on her face was unmistakable. When she first heard about the rewards for the top 10 in the Array Master competition, she was filled with anticipation. However, they all knew that such a ranking was too far away. It was almost impossible to obtain it. However, this extremely distant achievement seemed to be not far from Beichen's. Beichin looked at the smiling woman in front of him. She was happier to see his results than her own. He felt that these results were not as important as this woman's smile. Compared to the two of them, Yang Qinxue and the others had gone completely crazy. Did you see that? 10th place. Beichin is 10th place. Shen Duanyu looked down on Beichin in every way before. His ranking in this round is 1 place lower than Beichin's. Isn't that interesting? The bet between the two of them was already the focus of attention. Now that their rankings were so close, it attracted even more attention. Chapter 68-35. His palms had unknowingly become wet. Shen Duanyu looked at that dazzling ranking, and his heart was already filled with regret. If he had known that this would be the result, even if he was beaten to death, he wouldn't have asked Beichin to participate in the competition. If Beichin wasn't here, he would still be Zheng Gudao's disciple, and as long as he didn't participate, he would still be 10th in the second stage. This result was already an extremely good ranking in his previous expectations. Eldest senior brother had studied for so many years more than him, so his strength would naturally be stronger than his. No one would care about this point. However, everything was ruined now. Duanyu, if it weren't for Beichin, you would still be 10th in the second stage. The man at the side couldn't help but say, "You've always wanted to obtain the opportunity to enter the comprehension tablet. As long as you can maintain the top 10 in every stage, then you've succeeded." Shut up. Shen Duanyu couldn't control his emotions and cursed. Could it be that he didn't know all of this? He didn't need anyone else to remind him at all. The man's expression became very ugly after being abruptly reprimanded, but he didn't say anything else. Second place, Wanshui City's Jiang Haiyan. First place, Qianma City's Fan Ziheng. Everyone looked at all the rankings. Among the top 10, apart from Beichin, who was an unexpected dark horse, everyone else's rankings were about the same as everyone's expectations. Fan Xian and Zheng Gudao also smiled. Although they had been somewhat embarrassed in the previous round, their results in this round were still extremely good. Adding up the results of the two stages, Fan Ziheng and Jiang Haihan's results still surpassed Beichin's. Zheng Gudao looked at that dazzling 10th place. He actually hoped that Beichin would appear directly outside the top 100. However, the process of this also made him feel very helpless. When he detected Shen Duanyu's formation stone, he was very happy because this time, Shen Duanyu could be said to have performed above his standard. It was clearly a 3rd-grade formation stone, but the effect was better than a 4th-grade formation stone. This made him very surprised, and he even felt that his previous decision was too impulsive. Shen Duanyu was indeed a good seedling for a formation master. This performance also made him very surprised. He hadn't taken Shen Duanyu as a disciple for a long time. As long as he continued to cultivate, he would definitely become a genius formation master, like Jiang Haihan in the future. However, when he saw the formation stone made by Beichin, he finally understood what the gap was. From this formation stone, he could see that Shen Duanyu's formation stone. But his ingenious ideas on formation stone, Shen Duanyu couldn't be compared to Shen Duanyu's S. But his ingenious ideas on formation stone. Even he couldn't help but be amazed by the superposition of some of the formations. With Beichin, with his formation stone with his, just the A's is this. S. Fortunately, he was only a 3rd-grade array master. If he was already a 4th-grade array master, then none of the array masters present would be able to compete with him. How? How can Beichin be in 10th place? There must be something going on. Shen Duanyu, who was completely defeated, couldn't control his emotions and voiced his doubts on the spot. Chapter 68-36. Didn't Beichin just ascend not too long ago? His array skills shouldn't be that high. It's impossible for him to get such a ranking. Do you think Master Shen and Master Ning went easy on him? That's impossible. Master Shen has always been fair. He wouldn't do something like that. You're too naive. Who doesn't know that they've been competing with Master Shen recently? There are only 5 masters in total. Wouldn't it be easy for them to do something? Unlike the spectators below the stage, the array masters were somewhat unconvinced that this guy who had suddenly appeared had stolen the limelight and obtained such a good result. If it was really someone with such strength, his reputation would have spread far and wide. It was even more impossible for him to participate in the competition as an array master of Qingyang City. This was just too strange. Why are these people being so unreasonable? Bewitching relied on his strength, okay? A trace of worry appeared on Yang Qinshua's face. Don't worry. Master Shen and Master Ning aren't people who would cover up. Besides, if there really was a problem, Master Shen wouldn't let go of the opportunity. Bai Qingli's calm and confident voice dispelled some of Yang Qinshua's worry. In fact, even she herself found it hard to believe in such a result. Shen Duanyu couldn't help but panic after raising his doubts. But after seeing so many people agree with his thoughts, he immediately relaxed. Qin Jian frowned when he saw so many people questioning Bewitching's results. In the history of the Array Master competition, such a thing had never happened before. Masters, I'm afraid you'll have to explain to make everyone believe. At this moment, Ning Tian slowly stood up. We 5 masters confirmed the results together. Does everyone have doubts? Her cold and dignified eyes looked disdainfully at the crowd. With a strong pressure, the people who had been hooting and hooting almost instantly shut their mouths. The pressure of a grandmaster was not just a little terrifying. Bewitching isn't even a 3rd-grade array master. How could his array stones enter the top 10? Shen Duanyu didn't back down. He knew very well that now was the best chance to raise his doubts. Once they missed it, they wouldn't have another chance to raise their doubts. Ning Tian slowly narrowed her eyes. Who says he's not a 3rd-grade array master? Shen Duanyu was thinking that if Ning Tian could not explain herself, Bewitching's results for the first stage might be overturned. He did not expect to hear Ning Tian's question. Ning Tian was stunned. For a moment, she didn't understand what he meant. He's a 3rd-grade array master? He was so shocked that he couldn't even finish his sentence. The array stone made by Bewitching is here. If you don't believe it, you can come and take a look. This is undoubtedly a 3rd-grade array stone. Ning Tianyu's voice was slightly cold, and 3 words were clearly written on her frosty face. Not to be trifled with. You also made a 3rd-grade array stone. You don't think that a 3rd-grade array stone could have such a result. Are you doubting your own result? Following Ning Tian's rhetorical question, everyone's expressions became very interesting. Bewitching and Shen Duanyu were both 3rd-rank array masters, and their results were close. Wasn't that normal? Chapter 6837. Shen Duanyu was completely flustered now. Bewitching was a 3rd-grade array master? How could this guy be a 3rd-grade array master? Thinking back to when he first met Bewitching, this guy didn't mention his true level of array skills from beginning to end. A 3rd-grade array master, who hadn't even participated in the array master exam. Was there something wrong with this person? Shen Duanyu couldn't figure it out at all. And the final conclusion he came to was that Bewitching was definitely playing with him. A 3rd-grade array master who said he hadn't learned array skills for long? Only an idiot would believe that. However, the most important thing now was how to face the master's fury. I didn't mean that. Shen Duanyu was a little weak, but this kind of explanation was undoubtedly very weak in this kind of situation. Shen Duanyu, you first slandered Bewitching in the bazaar that there was a problem with the array stones he made, but couldn't produce any evidence. And now you're questioning his array master grade. It's undoubtedly because he hasn't participated in the array master exam before this. After the competition ends, I'll award the 3rd-grade array master badge. And as for your repeated slander, you must pay the price. At that moment, Ning Tian's temper flared. Everything that this brat had said was extremely displeasing. If there was real evidence, then it would be fine, but every time it was just nonsense without any evidence. If it wasn't for this kind of occasion today, and with everyone's help to testify, who knew what kind of person Bewitching would be now? As soon as these words came out, Shen Duanyu's mind was in chaos. Previously, it was because Zheng Gudao had been protecting him that he was able to escape disaster. Now that Zheng Gudao was no longer his master, naturally no one would speak up for him, so his fate could be imagined. Master Ning, I'm only raising doubts on behalf of everyone. Shen Duanyu looked behind him. Although he was the first to raise this matter, so many people expressed doubts. However, when he turned his head, he discovered that no one dared to look at his eyes, and they all avoided looking in other directions. Seeing this scene, Shen Duanyu's heart went cold. From beginning to end, you've been looking for trouble, Ning Tian said without any trace of politeness. Meanwhile, Shen Xing said, we'll make a decision on this matter after the competition ends. The competition will continue for now. However, I have to remind everyone here that slandering someone without any evidence is a disrespect to the formation mages, and an insult to the entire Magic Array Guild. I hope that in the future, everyone will treat this matter with caution, and respect your identity as a formation master. Although Shen Xing's words weren't directed at a specific person, it was actually more of a warning. Everyone felt as if they would be suffocated by this oppressive pressure. Array Masters had always been under the protection of the Array Master Guild. If anyone casually slandered an Array Master, the guild would not easily forgive them. Shen Duanyu's continuous targeting of Bewitching must have angered the two masters. Shen Duanyu's face turned pale. Even if the two masters didn't say anything, he knew that he would be in trouble after the competition. He subconsciously looked towards Zheng Gudao, hoping that Zheng Gudao would lend him a hand on account of their former master and disciple relationship. However, he discovered that Zheng Gudao couldn't even be bothered to spare him a glance, and the disgust on his face couldn't be any more obvious. Chapter 68-38. Zheng Gudao did not want to pay attention to Shen Duanyu at all at this moment. This guy was a classic example of a brainless person, still coming to find trouble at this time. Wasn't that courting death? He did not even speak, so there was naturally no problem. Simply a pig's head. At the thought that everyone knew that Shen Duanyu was originally his disciple, he felt a wave of shame. How embarrassing. If everyone has no other objections to this result, then the third round of the competition will be carried out next. Qin Jian's gaze swept across everyone. These two dark horses that suddenly appeared caused too much commotion and had to be quelled. Everyone shifted their gazes one after another, not daring to meet Qin Jian's eyes. Now that things had come to this, how could they still have doubts? With Bewitching's performance in the first round, as long as he was a third-rank array master, then this second round's results would not be strange at all. After seeing that everyone had no objections, Qin Jian spoke up. The third round is different from the previous two rounds. It's an array formation from a long time ago. This array formation has already shown signs of damage. All array masters can carefully examine this array formation and use your own understanding to write down your understanding of this array formation and the method to repair it. Hearing this competition method, a trace of surprise also appeared between Bailey Hongzhuang's brows. This method was not something she had thought of before. Fan Xian added, this array formation's level is very high. It's very normal that everyone can't understand it. You just need to write down your own understanding. For a moment, a look of bewilderment appeared in the eyes of all the array masters. Since it could be said like this by a master, presumably this array formation's level already surpassed their grade by a lot. Wanting to figure it out on the whole was probably very difficult. But as long as they could figure out some aspects, that was also excellent. Immediately after, an array formation appeared on the high platform. Even with a certain distance, the group of array masters could also clearly feel the array formation's undulations. What a powerful array formation! Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. From the moment this array formation appeared, she felt a very strong undulation. This kind of undulation was not what the array formations that they usually created could compare to. Furthermore, the scale of this array formation was also very large. Shen Xing waved her hand, and the array wrapped around the entire high platform. All the array masters could carefully examine the situation of the array. Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly noticed that there was a loophole at the very top of the formation. Obviously, this was where the problem was. This seems to be an illusion array? Bewitching looked at it carefully, and then nodded slightly. There seems to be traces of a teleportation array in this illusion array. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang also fell into deep thought. Complicated illusion arrays were actually traceable, because they were all made up of basic arrays. However, when these basic formations were combined in various ways, their original appearance could no longer be seen. Bailey Hongzhuang was certain that this formation was at least at the 6th level. With their current strength, it was undoubtedly impossible for them to see through it. Therefore, the requirement for this competition was only to write down some of their own understanding. Shihai and the others were perplexed. They could feel the power of this array formation, but they were a little confused as to where it was stronger. Why did the third round become such a question? Who would be able to tell? Chapter 6839. Helpless voices rang out as the array masters' faces revealed a puzzled expression. This kind of hurdle really caught them off guard. Fan Ziheng and Jiang Haihan carefully sized up the array in front of them. As a 4th-grade array master, their perception was much stronger than a 3rd-grade array master, and they could comprehend more. This array gave them a feeling of vastness and power. Although they were also confused and did not understand how this array was stacked, let alone repaired. But they were still very calm, because they knew that the other array masters were in a worse situation than them. Compared to them, they were already in a much better situation. This is an ancient array. A city lord found it in a small world, and brought it back. Even for us, we don't have a complete understanding of this array. The reason why this point was chosen as the question, on one hand, is to test everyone's understanding. On the other hand, it is to brainstorm and trigger more inspiration. Fan Xian said unhurriedly. Hearing this, the crowd who originally thought that Fan Ziheng and the rest might have cheated fell silent. Even a master could not see through it. This test is too difficult. I wonder if Bewitching can get a good result. Yang Qinxue was a little worried. She really hoped that Bewitching could enter the top 10. That was the Enlightenment Tablet, a place that many cultivators dreamed of. Bewitching was very close to the Enlightenment Tablet. As long as he could get a good result in this 3rd stage, even if he was in the top 20, he still had a chance. Didn't you see that Fan Ziheng and Jiang Haihan were also at a loss? I feel that this can only depend on luck. If a 4th-grade array master could not see through it, how could a 3rd-grade array master? Thinking about it, Hongzhuang should only be a 2nd-grade array master. This is completely impossible. Yang Lingfeng was speechless. At a glance, all the array formation masters were like headless flies, wandering around everywhere. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the array in front of her. She did not know why, but she felt that it was somewhat familiar. Where had she seen this array before? When this thought appeared, she began to think carefully. An illusion array combined with a transportation array. This array had an extremely confusing effect, and could also send people to another place unknowingly. Bewitching also fell into deep thought. His beautiful face was completely calm at this moment. He did not say a word as he sized up the array. It was as if he had also entered a certain kind of thought. The array masters who were originally debating had already shut their mouths. This result was related to the final result. Naturally, they could not tell anyone about their understanding. The 3rd stage was very long, a full 2 hours, which gave the array masters enough time to comprehend. Do you think that these youngsters can see through it? Fan Xian's expression. They were worried when they first thought. When they thought. Chapter 6840. Now that everyone's formation method was somewhat fixed, the appearance of such a brand new formation at this time was quite shocking to everyone. Moreover, according to their research, the effect of this formation should be an illusory formation and a teleportation formation. In fact, they could also stack these two formations together. It was just that this formation's illusory formation's effect and teleportation distance would be slightly stronger. If they wanted to achieve this level of formation, the complexity of the entire formation would be greatly increased. However, this formation would undoubtedly be much simpler. This was the most interesting part. You're right. Fan Xian nodded slightly. This was the only reason that could convince him. In the past, there were many schools of formation masters. The formations created by different schools of formation masters would have certain differences. Now the entire chaotic immortal realm and the immortal realm are almost all of the same lineage, so being able to see this kind of different method has greatly changed their views. If it can give everyone new inspiration, it would undoubtedly be best. Hearing this, Zheng Gudao didn't nitpick. This reminds me of the trapping formation that Kid Bewitching created. His method is very interesting. Ning Tian turned to look at Shen Xing and spoke very softly. Obviously, she didn't want Zheng Gudao to hear. Shen Xing nodded slightly. Beichen's ideas in this area are indeed very amazing. 2 hours seemed to be very long, but to the formation masters on the high platform, it was extremely short. This extremely complicated formation made them very confused. Before they knew it, there was only an incense stick's worth of time left. Look, Jiang Haihan and Fan Ziheng have already started writing. Geniuses are indeed different. They really live up to their reputation. So many people are still running around like headless flies, but they've already started writing. Everyone suddenly discovered that almost all of the formation masters who had started writing were 4th grade formation masters. Many 3rd grade formation masters were hesitating. As for 2nd grade formation masters, they had basically given up. This stage, I'm afraid the situation is not good. Bai Ziyuan's expression was complicated. If it was a normal competition, they could roughly guess. However, in the current situation, the 3rd round's variables were really too great. Before the results were out, they wouldn't know who would perform better. Time is running out. Beichen and Hong Zhuang haven't started writing yet. What should we do? Yang Lingfeng was very anxious. He looked like he couldn't wait to go on stage and write for them. However, he knew very well that he couldn't write anything at all. Shen Duanyu was also very conflicted as he wrote his own thoughts. He knew very well that under such circumstances, almost no one could write the correct answer. Therefore, all he could do was write down all the scenarios that he could think of. As long as there was one point that was correct, there would be points. It was much better than not writing anything at all. After he finished writing all of this, he still felt a little guilty. He really didn't know which part of what he had written was correct. However, when he noticed that Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang had yet to pick up their pens, he was relieved. In the end, if one's strength was not enough, it would not be enough. Even after looking at it for so long, he still could not see anything. Chapter 68-41. As time ran out, many of the formation masters started to panic. What should they write? They didn't even know where to start. Their minds were in a mess, and they didn't even know what to write. What should we do? Many of them had already fallen into a state of panic. This feeling of anxiety and helplessness was enough to break them down. If we really can't do it, we'll just write randomly. Who knows, we might even get something right. Write randomly. Even if they were to write randomly, they didn't know where to start. Ning Tian, the 2 young people you're optimistic about haven't even touched their pens yet. A playful smile appeared on Zheng Gudao's face. There wasn't much time left. If they had any ideas, they would have already started writing. These 2 fellows still hadn't written anything. It was clear that they didn't have any ideas in their heads. Ning Tian's expression was a little complicated. He actually understood that this level of formation was too much for Di Beichen and the others. However, even if they really didn't know how to do it, they should at least write something down. It was better than handing in blank paper. Then I hope your favorite student can get first place, Ning Tian said slowly. As soon as he said that, embarrassment flashed across Zheng Gudao's face. First place? No matter how well Jiang Haihan performed in this round, her results couldn't possibly be higher than Fan Ziheng's. Looking at Ning Tian's smiling face, Zheng Gudao rolled his eyes. Let's see how long this guy can be smug for. Just when everyone thought that Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang were going to hand in blank papers, Di Beichen finally picked up his pen. Seeing this, Yang Lingfeng and the others couldn't help but sigh in relief. Although they knew that he must have written it casually out of helplessness, it was better than not writing at all. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly picked up her pen. A confident smile appeared on her peach plum face, and she started writing on the paper. On the other hand, Bewitching had already folded his answer and placed it in his wallet. That calm and collected look was very different from what everyone thought of him, being flustered and at a loss. If it weren't for the fact that everyone knew that he definitely couldn't write an excellent answer, they would have thought that he had a card up his sleeve. Dong! Bailey Hongzhuang didn't put down the pen in her hand until the moment before the end. She put the answer in. As the answer was taken away, everyone couldn't help but start discussing. What kind of formation is this? I'm so dizzy, I can't write any answers. I'm not much better than you. Anyway, I just wrote down everything I could think of. Damn it, the results are really in jeopardy now. The array masters couldn't help but sigh. Now they couldn't even estimate their results. Fan Ziheng and Jiang Haihan's expressions were also a little helpless, but compared to everyone else's confusion, they still had some confidence. At least, they could still be sure that some of the answers they had written were correct. Because the results of the third round can't be checked by the detector, the 5 masters need to check them one by one. The results will be announced tomorrow at noon. Qin Jian stood up and announced. With more than 1,000 answers, no matter how fast the 5 masters were, it was impossible to give the results on the same day. Chapter 6842. Although everyone was a little disappointed with this situation, they also understood that this matter could not be rushed. The results would be out tomorrow, which was already the fastest speed. Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching had just walked down the stage when Yang Qinxue and the others came up to them. Before the two of them could speak, Yang Lingfeng and Yang Qinxue's frenzied voices had already resounded. Bewitching, you're too awesome. It's your first time participating in the Array Master competition, and you already have such a ranking. We're completely stunned. Hongzhuang, you still said that you're not good at array techniques. Are you kidding us? How can you get such a ranking if you're not good at it? That's right. You guys are too modest. This is simply shocking. Facing the chatter of the two, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching also had a helpless look on their faces. Yang Han pulled his children back and said, "The two of you have so much to say. Which one should they answer first?" Yang Lingfeng nodded slightly. That's true. Then answer mine first. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. There's no hurry. Let's go back first. There are so many pairs of eyes watching us now. It won't be too late to talk after we return to our residence. Bai Ziyuan also spoke up, with a trace of complexity between his brows. After you go back today, it's best that you don't go out, in case something unexpected happens. Bewitching and Bailey Hongzhuang were no different from two dark horses. The latter was better. Although her ranking in the first round was amazing, her results in the second round were still considered normal. The former was different. Whether it was the first round or the second round, she was in the top 10. To some forces, she had already posed a big threat. The opportunity to comprehend the tablet was extremely precious to any city. Originally, he did not mention this, because he felt that it was impossible for them to enter the top 10. Not to mention the top 10, they did not even think about the top 100. Who would have thought that the two little fellows would bring them such a big surprise? Looking at Bai Ziyuan's serious expression, Bailey Hongzhuang and Yang Lingfeng also understood the situation. We understand. Yang Han's face darkened. If Bai Ziyuan could think of it, how could he not? The opportunity to comprehend the monolith was not limited to the array formation master, but it could also be given to others. Usually, among the top 10 array formation masters, other than Fan Ziheng, and those with deep backgrounds, the other people's spots were given to the cities they belonged to. Of course, the city would not treat them unfairly in this regard. Once these quotas that belonged to them in the eyes of the big cities fell into the hands of others, one could imagine how unhappy they would be. It wasn't impossible for him to take advantage of the situation. Fortunately, the Array Formation Master competition had a rule that no one was allowed to attack the cultivators in the room. This was also a form of protection, because Yang Han had never thought that he would get a good result in the Array Master competition. He didn't bring any helpers this time. Therefore, the safest way now was to stay in the house and wait for the competition to end tomorrow. Until they returned to their residence, the young siblings' mood was not affected by any danger at all. Hong Zhuang, you've kept us in the dark for too long. I originally thought that you were at most a first-grade array master. Who would have thought that you would have such a result? Chapter 6843. I've never participated in the array master assessment before. So just like Bewitching, I don't know my own level. What's more, I'm very clear that my level is much worse than Bewitching's, so I naturally think so. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. In fact, she was very surprised by this result. It was as if something that she thought was extremely difficult had suddenly become very simple. At least, the difficulty of this test was much easier than she thought. You're all too modest, Yang Lingfeng said in high spirits. Did you notice Shen Duanyu's expression today? It was simply too wonderful. I don't even know how to describe it, haha. This guy really doesn't have eyes. He actually wants to compete with Bewitching. This time his face is swollen. Bai Qingli said neither quickly nor slowly. Shen Duanyu is not a person who will give up easily. Looking at his appearance today, I know it won't be easy to stop. I just don't know what kind of punishment he will receive after the competition ends tomorrow. Don't worry, Bewitching and Hong Zhuang have Master Ning's protection. How could they be afraid of him? Yang Lingfeng said with a proud face. He was Master Zhen's disciple before, so we had to be careful. Now that he no longer has this identity, he can't even compare to an ordinary array master. That's true. As long as we're careful and don't fall for his tricks, it'll be fine. Yang Qinxue looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Yang Lingfeng's calm and casual appearance and couldn't help but ask. Today's third test is really too abnormal. I saw that many array masters didn't even know how to write. How are you guys doing? Are you confident? Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other tacitly. Although they hadn't talked about this matter, they noticed each other's eyes and understood. It's okay, Di Beichen said lightly. Yang Qinxue originally wanted to say something, but Yang Lingfeng gave her a look, and she closed her mouth. Sister, aren't you just touching the pot that doesn't boil? We all know that Beichen and Yang Lingfeng hurriedly wrote down the results before the competition ended. So how could they have a good result? If they could really understand it, they would have written it down long ago. Writing it so late was obviously pushing a duck to a perch. Although there were many array masters who did this. In another place. Duanyu, what should we do now? The man's face was full of anxiety. Shen Duanyu's face was ashen. Even now, he was still unwilling to believe what had happened today. The results haven't come out yet? The man couldn't help but worry. If the results, how can you come back? Grandmaster Ning's temper is not simple. Today's matter has clearly angered the two grandmasters, so your punishment will certainly not be light. Now, why don't you take the chance? There was a storm, the S's. What's the use of running away now? TTS no, they're just deceiving themselves. He had only raised his doubts, so the Array Master Guild wouldn't take his life. The most serious punishment would be that he would never be able to join the Array Master Guild again. Running or not, there was no meaning to it. Chapter 6844. Shen Duanyu's expression was complicated. When he recalled how well Zhen Gudao had treated him in the past, he felt a stab of pain in his heart. However, in the current situation, it was impossible for him to ask for help unless he could achieve good results and arouse Zhen Gudao's appreciation of talent. Don't think so much. Let's talk about it tomorrow. Shen Duanyu waved his hand. He really didn't want to think about these things. He couldn't even understand how his loss of self-control had developed to such an extent. Unfortunately, it was useless no matter how much he regretted it. He could only blame himself for being wrong. However, he believed that Di Beichen was also helpless in this third stage. The only thing he could hope for was that this guy's luck was bad, and all his guesses were wrong. At the Formation Master Guild, the 5 masters were gathered in the hall at this moment. Qin Jian didn't leave either. Instead, he watched the 5 masters mark the papers together. For the sake of fairness, The brocade pouch was opened by Qin Jian, who passed the contents to the masters. After they had marked the papers together, the marks would be recorded. From the beginning to the end, the 5 masters wouldn't know who had written the contents. Naturally, it couldn't be considered cheating. After all, the contents of this stage were somewhat ambiguous. Although the results couldn't be changed, as long as one had the intention to cover up, the marks could still be increased. However, Qin Jian was looking at the 5 masters nervously at this moment, because the slightest carelessness would cause a furious voice to ring out. Take a look what's written here. 0 marks. Ning Tian couldn't help but curse as he read the contents. This is a formation. Of course I fucking know it's a formation. But what kind of formation is this? Look at this again. This formation is made up of a trapping formation, a killing formation, an illusion formation, and so on. Does this guy think I'm an idiot? He wrote down all the types of array formations. Is this a test for him or for me? It's simply bullshit. Shen Xing saw that Ning Tian was about to lose control, and hurriedly snatched the paper from his hand. Don't tear it, we haven't looked at it yet. It's pointless to look at something like that, Ning Tian said angrily. Her face was flushed red, as if she was really angry. Shen Xing pinched his glabella. Even he couldn't control himself after reading the contents of these papers, let alone Ning Tian. What on earth was written? Did we make a mistake in the last round? This writing is worse than not writing at all. Fan Xian also had a helpless look on his face. If he had a choice, he really didn't want to review the content anymore. It would be easier to just hand in a blank paper, especially when he saw that the dense writing was actually all nonsense. He really wanted to give those blank scrolls extra points. Sigh. That's to be expected. Everyone just bear with it for now. After all, it's only once every 10 years, Shen Xing consoled. Qin Jian heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Shen Xing had helped to mediate the situation. Fortunately, there was a good-tempered master like Shen Xing otherwise. He was worried that the other masters would explode in anger. If they didn't review the papers, then he really wouldn't know what to do. Look at this, it's written quite well. Zheng Gudao looked at the paper in his hand, and a relieved expression appeared on his face. Chapter 68-45. Shen Xing took the test paper and carefully examined it before nodding in agreement. Indeed, this should have been written by a 4th-rank array master. His understanding and views are much more outstanding. Ning Tian breathed a sigh of relief. At least there's still some potential. After Fan Xian saw the familiar handwriting, a trace of joy appeared on his face. He could recognize that this handwriting was Fan Ziheng's. He had no intention of covering up for his son. He was very clear about his son's level in array techniques. Even if the 3rd stage was not easy with his strength, he could still make some judgments. Based on the judgment of the other masters, he already knew the result. This paper should have been written by Ziheng, so I'll let you all grade it. I'll avoid arousing suspicion, Fan Xian said with a smile. Hearing this, Shen Xing and the others finally understood. I said that the content written on this paper was very outstanding, and I was wondering which city's outstanding array master was from. It turns out that it's Master Fan's son. No wonder he has this level of skill, Zheng Gudao said with a smile. Ning Tian glanced at Zheng Gudao indifferently. Although he also acknowledged Fan Ziheng's strength, every time he saw Zheng Gudao's face, he was unwilling to pay attention to him. They were clearly people of the same level, but he had to follow behind and flatter. It was really lowering his status. After a brief moment of joy, there were more papers that no one was willing to pay attention to. Of course, there was no lack of array masters who saw part of it. After a round of grading, the 5 masters' eyes were bloodshot. The temperament that they had cultivated all these years seemed to have all been broken at this moment. Qin Jian was drenched in cold sweat. He could only send someone to bring some calming tea, but he also felt some sympathy for the 5 masters. Who told them to come up with such an unorthodox question? Was this not the worst thing to do? Just when everyone had adapted to this situation, a bewildered voice suddenly sounded. This paper. Shen Xing and the others turned their heads and looked at Fan Xian with some curiosity. They did not know what kind of paper could actually cause him to be so surprised. What's wrong with this paper? What's the difference? Zhen Gudao asked. Just as Zhen Gudao was about to take the paper from Fan Xian's hands, Fan Xian grabbed it tightly. Wait. Fan Xian stared intently at the contents of the paper and fell into deep thought. Could it be that this is the case? The four of them looked at Fan Xian, who was lost in thought, and then suddenly had an epiphany. Their hearts were filled with doubts. Everything was fine. What was going on? Suddenly, Fan Xian's eyes lit up and his cheeks flushed as he said, "Genius! What a genius! Master Fan, what's wrong with you?" Shen Xing asked with a puzzled expression. She couldn't understand why Fan Xian was behaving in such an exaggerated manner. At the same time, Ning Tian could no longer hold back her curiosity. She snatched the paper from Fan Xian's hands. "Let me see what's going on." Seeing that Ning Tian had snatched the paper, Shen Xing also came over. There wasn't much content on the paper, and the handwriting was very elegant. However, there was a trace of arrogance and heroic spirit in the handwriting, which was pleasing to the eye. Chapter 68-46. When Zhen Gudao and the other master noticed their expressions, the confusion in their hearts grew even stronger. "What's going on?" Fan Xian handed the paper to Zhen Gudao and said excitedly, "A genius has appeared in this competition. The content that he explained is simply richer than what we've deduced. He even saw through how this array formation is superimposed." When these words came out, Zhen Gudao and the other master were dumbfounded. What did he say? The content that the five of them had not been able to decipher after working together for so long was actually seen through by a young person participating in the competition? The age of the array formation masters participating in the array formation master competition was extremely young to them. Didn't this mean that this array formation master's attainments were even more astonishing than theirs? After reading the content, Ning Tian fell into deep thought. He was trying to superimpose these array formations together, pondering whether it could really achieve that kind of effect. As he gradually thought everything through, he increasingly felt that this judgment might not be wrong. Compared to all the papers that he had seen before, none of them could compare to this paper. Zhen Gudao and the others also fell into deep thought. At this moment, they only felt that this third round's assessment was not wrong. All the frustration and anger from before vanished like smoke with the appearance of this paper. When Qin Jian saw the five masters suddenly stop grading like this and fall into deep thought, he was also somewhat astonished. To be able to make the five masters reveal such expressions, then how much of a genius did the cultivator who wrote this paper have to be? Just like this, the five masters pondered for a long time before revealing expressions of sudden realization. This is a deep understanding of the superimposition of this array formation, and it's almost completely correct. Zhen Gudao could not help but exclaim. He did not know which genius had written this, but from this answer, he was greatly inspired. "Why don't we try according to the method on this paper?" Ning Tian suddenly suggested. Hearing this, the four of them looked at each other. They all had the idea of giving it a try. If it really succeeded, then this answer would be a perfect score. Most importantly, this train of thought allowed them to understand how to study array formations using a different way of thinking. "That's right, I think we can give it a try. However, there are still some areas that we need to think about. Although it has been written very specifically, there are still some areas that have not been described. I'm afraid that we will have to spend some time. Then what are we waiting for?" When Qin Jian saw that the five masters were doing fine with their evaluations, they suddenly wanted to work together to create an array formation. He immediately stood out. "Master, I know you are very interested now, but we have to announce the acceptance tomorrow. There is still so much content left to be graded. Why don't we finish reviewing these first, and then we can work together to create the array? What do you think?" 5 pairs of eyes landed on Qin Jian, causing him to feel a deep sense of pressure. After a short while, Shen Xing said, "That's right. The most important thing today is the evaluation. As for this attempt, there will be many more opportunities after tomorrow." Qin Jian heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Shen Xing had changed her mind. As expected, Master Shun had the best temper among the 5 masters. Chapter 6847. If you want to give it a try, there will be plenty of opportunities. There's no need to be in such a hurry. Shun Xing looked at the dispirited crowd and understood everyone's obsession with array formations. It wasn't easy for them to get such inspiration, but they couldn't give it a try. One could imagine how depressed they were. There are still some problems that we haven't figured out yet. It will take some time to figure them out. Rather than that, why don't we finish what we're doing first and focus on these after the competition? Although everyone was a little helpless, they nodded in agreement. Shun Xing's words made sense. This wasn't something that could be done in a short period of time. Ning Tian sighed as she looked at the messy papers. She had no idea what was written on them. There would be no harm if there was no comparison. Originally, before they saw this paper, their tolerance level was still higher. But now, it was simply unbearable to look at. Qin Jian looked at the 5 masters who were so angry that they could tear the paper to dust at any time. He was also a little flustered. He was really worried that it would be gone just like that. Just as the remaining papers were getting fewer and fewer, Ning Tian suddenly looked at the paper in his hand. The bold and powerful handwriting was domineering and casual. It was like flowing clouds and flowing water. It was very carefree to look at. Most importantly, there wasn't a single word in the paper that was fabricated. Qin Jian saw that Ning Tian was holding a paper and stopped moving. He couldn't help but ask, "Master Ning, what's wrong?" "Don't say anything." Ning Tian looked straight ahead and said that. He looked like he felt that it was a waste of time to even say another word. Qin Jian glanced curiously. Master Ning's expression didn't look like he was writing nonsense. Could it be that another genius had appeared? "Ning Tian, why are you in a daze again? There's not much time left." Fan Xian grumbled when he saw that Ning Tian had suddenly stopped. "A genius? This paper is even more detailed than the previous one." Ning Tian looked at the paper in his hand in disbelief. Ever since he looked at the previous paper, he felt that he had figured out a lot of things that he didn't understand. Now that he looked at the detailed explanation on this paper, the remaining unclear points were all cleared up at this moment. If the previous one was a brief description, then this one was a detailed description. Not only was the method of layering, but even the method of filling in the gaps was clearly written. He had originally thought about these aspects, but after reading the contents of the paper, everything became clear to him. As soon as Ning Tian's voice fell, Shun Xing and the other 3 completely disregarded their image and rushed to Ning Tian's side almost immediately. The 4 heads squeezed together, and their gazes fell on the paper in unison. This extremely crowded position did not seem to be a problem for them at this moment. All that was left in their minds was the handwriting on the paper. That's right, the introduction on this paper is more specific. Which genius is this? There's actually such a person in this year's Array Master competition. Shun Xing took the first sheet of paper and carefully compared it. In fact, what the 2 had written was correct. It was just that the latter had written in more detail and had a more thorough understanding of the subject. Chapter 6848. Incredible, truly incredible. The 5 of them were immersed in their own thoughts. This kind of paper was simply impossible to nitpick. Say, for this person to be able to see through so much, could it be that he has come into contact with this array before? Zheng Gudao was a little doubtful. If one did not have a certain level of understanding, it would be very difficult to see through everything within 2 hours. So what if he has come into contact with it? None of us were able to understand it. Ning Tian countered with a question. Zheng Gudao was stunned. This was also the truth. Even if someone had come into contact with this array before them, to be able to answer all of this was his own ability. He really is a genius. I'm curious as to what kind of person he is. Fan Xian sighed emotionally. For such a genius, if he really relied on his own judgment, then his future development would really be limitless. As array masters, they knew very well that the grade was not a problem for the time being. Intelligence, wisdom, and extraordinary eyesight were often more important. If he could see through all of this with his current level of skill, then as long as he put in a little more effort in the future, his achievements in this area would certainly not be lacking. This was because one's grade could be raised through one's own efforts, but judgment and imagination were not something that could be achieved through hard work alone. For a moment, those few fourth-rank array masters appeared in the minds of all the masters, and they pondered which two people would have such a performance. It was just that no matter how they thought about it, they could not think of who was more suitable. When the results are announced tomorrow, we will know. Shen Xing smiled faintly. He also wished that he could immediately know who had written it, but this was against the rules. Fortunately, the results would be announced tomorrow, and they would naturally know the results. Fan Xian could not help but sigh. He originally thought that Ziheng would definitely be the well-deserved first place in this competition. He never thought that there would really be crouching tigers and hidden dragons this time. In the first round, Bewitching and Bailey Hongzhuang stood out and stole Ziheng's limelight. Fortunately, he finally won back in the second round. He originally thought that there should not be anyone who could surpass him in the third round. But who would have thought that two such geniuses would appear? It was clearly impossible to obtain first place this time. However, faced with this kind of answer, he could not find any fault with it. He did not even have any thoughts of fighting for justice for Fan Ziheng, because this kind of genius was already not something that they could stop. After the doubts in the hearts of the five masters were completely resolved, everyone continued with the grading. No longer seemed so anxious. After all, the biggest problem had been solved, and their moods were very good. Qin Jian looked at the five masters' size, and he was endlessly curious. He did not know what kind of person it was to be so outstanding. If their strength was not strong, he could think of ways to rope them in. To be praised by the five masters, it was obvious that he would become another master in the future. It would be best if they could rope him in as soon as possible. In the face. Chapter 6849. That night, Yang Han and the others were also sleepless. They had never had such good results in all these years. They could only blame the third stage for being too complicated. Even if their rationality told them not to hope, they still couldn't help but fantasize. If everyone couldn't answer, then there was still hope. Or if Beichen and the others were lucky and just randomly guessed it, then that would be the best. Among all of them, Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang had the best sleep. The two didn't feel the tense atmosphere at all. They went to bed early after returning. Therefore, when the two of them woke up feeling refreshed, they saw a patch of dark circles under their eyes. What happened to you last night? Did someone want to sneak an attack on us? Bailey Hongzhuang was a little surprised. Last night, she and Beichen went to bed early, but before they went to bed, they paid attention to their surroundings. Although it was inevitable that some people would pay attention to them, everyone knew their limits. No one chose to make a move, so there was no problem. Could it be that something happened after they went to bed last night? Yang Lingfeng looked at the two who were refreshed and in high spirits, and let out a speechless sigh. Heavens, aren't the two of you going too far? We were worried about your results, and didn't rest the whole night. In the end, you two slept so well. Is there any justice in this world? Bailey Hongzhuang finally understood. So it wasn't something that happened last night. They were just too worried. You two are too exaggerated. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. This result is already destined. Even if you were worried the whole night, there wouldn't be any changes. That's true, but no one would think that way. Yang Lingfeng was dumbfounded. Hongzhuang and Bailey Hongzhuang were too calm. If it was anyone else, they wouldn't be able to pretend that nothing happened. He dared to guarantee that Fan Ziheng and Jiang Haihan wouldn't be able to sleep as well as the two of them last night. Facing the calmness of the two, Yang Han's eyes showed a trace of admiration. Even if MT Tai collapsed in front of them, they would not show it on their faces. The mentality of these two people was not something that ordinary people could compare with. It was no wonder that despite having such outstanding strength, they had never shown an arrogant and complacent look. Their mentality was different, so it was reasonable for the two masters to admire them so much. There's still some time before noon. Do you want to take a nap? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Yang Qinxue waved her hand. I couldn't fall asleep last night. It's even more impossible now. All right then. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. She also understood that this result was very important to Qingyang City, so it made sense for something like this to happen. This morning was an extremely difficult one for Qingyang City. They basically counted the time until there were still 2 hours before noon. Only then did Yang Han say, "Let's set off." As soon as he said this, Yang Lingfeng almost jumped out with a start. Let's go, let's go. I've been waiting for half a day. We could have set off a long time ago." "There's no point in going there so early," Bewitching said. "The earlier we go, the better," Yang Lingfeng said frankly. Chapter 6850. Because it was still early, when everyone arrived, they only thought that the spectator stands should be empty. However, the situation was completely different from what they had imagined. The entire spectator stands were filled with people, and from the looks of it, it seemed that they had been here for quite some time. Yang Lingfeng said proudly, "How is it? I'm not the only one who's anxious, right?" If it wasn't for his reputation, he would have been waiting here long ago. Although he was still waiting here was much better than waiting at his residence. Bailey Hongzhuang looked around. Sure enough, everyone's enthusiasm for this place was astonishing. "All right, you're right." Bai Ziyuan greeted Yang Han with a smile when he saw him. "Brother Yang, you're here. It was a wise decision for you to be late today." Before the crowd had the time to think about what Bai Ziyuan meant, some people had already come up to him. "Young Master D. Miss Bailey, I'm the city lord of Qinghai City. If there's a chance, why don't you come visit my Qinghai City? Our city is very fertile and has many beauties. Young Master D, how about? Miss Bailey, if you're interested, come to our place. I'll definitely treat you well." One by one, olive branches were thrown at Bewitching and Bailey Hongzhuang. They didn't even have time to reply to anyone before their voices were drowned out by the others. Yang Han, Yang Qinxue, Yang Lingfeng. At this moment, they finally understood what Bai Ziyuan meant. They were thinking that they should have come a little later. Why was there still more than an hour? "Father, they're too much. They're basically trying to steal people in front of you." Yang Lingfeng looked at the usually high and mighty city lords, who were now smiling amiably. His heart was in a mess. He had never seen these city lords smiling so wholeheartedly and approachably. Sure enough, geniuses were different from the rest. This treatment was completely incomparable. However, they had finally found 2 treasures. How could they just let others steal them away? Saying that they were trying to steal people was putting it mildly. They were simply trying to rob them. Yang Han. Stealing people? "Father, aren't you going to do anything?" Yang Qinxue was a little anxious. The conditions offered by these cities were not ordinary. In comparison, the treatment that they gave Beichen and Li Wuyo could not compare. However, he had to fight for it. Yang Han's expression was extremely complicated. He also wanted to do something, but if he spoke now, it would seem too petty. Moreover, with so many city lords, he alone was not enough. Many of these cities were larger than Qingyang City. Originally, they were only worried that others would come to snatch the slots. Now they were going to snatch the slots directly. At this moment, Bewitching also deeply felt the feeling of being recruited. The effects of an auxiliary profession were indeed amazing. "Thank you for your invitation to Beichen and Lin Yun. However, they can't make a decision right now. Why don't we wait until the competition is over?" Yang Han stood in front of Bewitching's group, a smile on his face as he looked at the city lords. However, no matter how one looked at it, that smile was somewhat awkward. Chapter 6851. It wasn't until the city lords decided to wait until the end of the competition that Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching breathed a sigh of relief. "It's finally quiet." Xiao He heaved a sigh of relief. Earlier, she had only felt her ears buzzing, and she could not even hear what the other party was saying. Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching also relaxed and sat down. This situation was truly beyond their imagination. However, before the 2 of them could calm down, Yang Lingfeng came over and said, Don't listen to the nonsense of those fellows. Who knows if they're here for the Tablet of Enlightenment? Let me tell you, the opportunity to comprehend the Tablet of Enlightenment is extraordinarily rare. If you really have the chance to obtain it this time, don't give it to anyone else no matter what. Do you understand? Bailey Hongzhuang originally thought that Yang Lingfeng wanted them to stay in Qingyang City. She never thought that she would hear such words. Her heart warmed slightly. So that was what he was worried about. Don't worry. If we're really lucky enough to obtain this opportunity, only an idiot would hand it over. Yang Qinxue said faintly. There are plenty of idiots like that. Bailey Hongzhuang. You're right. Bailey Hongzhuang and Yang Lingfeng were not the only ones here. Some of the popular formation masters in the top 10 were also very lively at this moment. Voices of agreement could be heard everywhere. In this process, it was finally time. As Qin Jian and the 5 masters appeared on the high platform, the voices of the entire spectator stands practically disappeared in an instant. Everyone's fiery gazes turned towards the high platform. The results that they were most looking forward to were about to be announced. Lingfeng, if the formation masters of a city perform better, will the city also be rewarded? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Yang Lingfeng nodded. Of course there will be rewards. However, to every city, the most important thing is not these rewards. The honor that it represents is more important. As for the rewards, each city might be able to obtain them through other channels. But this honor could only be bestowed through the competition. Standing on the high platform, Qin Jian smiled as he looked at everyone's expectant gazes. I'm sure everyone is looking forward to the results of this year's Array Master competition. After yesterday's evaluation by the 5 Grandmasters, the results are out. Qin Jian looked at the 5 masters and was surprised to find that the 5 masters were also looking forward to this result. Next, the total score will be shown first on the ranking board, and then the third round's ranking will be shown. Because this method was the most anticipated, Qin Jian went straight to the point, and no one paid any attention to him. They had already turned their attention to the ranking board on the high platform. Qin Jian felt a little helpless about this. However, he knew that the results were much more attractive than him. So he stood aside and waited for the results to come out. 100th place, Wuyang City's Yun Lian. 99th place. The rankings began to appear one after another, and all the cultivators who saw their own rankings could not help but burst into cheers. This was the final result, which meant that they had indeed entered the top 100. Every time a ranking was announced, waves of congratulations would erupt from the surrounding array masters. The entire scene was extremely exciting and lively. Chapter 6852. All of the spell formation masters who had a chance of winning held their breaths as they stared at the names that appeared. When they realized that their names weren't on the list, they had mixed feelings. On one hand, they were disappointed that their names weren't on the list. On the other hand, they hoped that they would be able to win a higher ranking. Yang Qinxue clenched her fists. She was even more nervous than if she were the one participating in the competition. Sister, don't be so nervous, Yang Lingfeng said. Yang Qinxue took a deep breath and inhaled the fresh air. She had forgotten how long she had been holding her breath. You're right. There's no point in being nervous. Yang Qinxue was amused. She had been in the chaotic immortal realm for so many years and had experienced all kinds of situations. Now that she was waiting for the results, she actually forgot to breathe. She turned to look at Yang Lingfeng. She didn't think that her younger brother would be so calm. However, when she turned to look at him, she discovered that Yang Lingfeng was trembling. Brother, why are you trembling? I'm panicking. I don't want to. Yang Lingfeng placed his hand on his thigh. He wanted to press it down, but he discovered that his hand had started to tremble. Yang Qinxue. She was overthinking. Stop trembling. You're embarrassing yourself. Who would notice me now? I can't control my fucking legs. Bailey Hongzhuang. Bewitching. Yang Han had already turned his head. Clearly, he didn't want to look at his son and daughter. There are already 50 names on the list, but they still haven't appeared. Yang Lingfeng looked at Bewitching nervously and said, Don't be nervous. Your results will definitely be better. Bewitching. I'm not nervous. Don't pretend, I understand. Yang Lingfeng patted Bewitching's shoulder, his face showing that he understood. Bewitching. Bailey Hongzhuang stared at the names that kept appearing. She was also thinking about Beicheng's results. Although her results for the second round were slightly worse, she believed that Beicheng's answers for the third round would not be bad. Overall, it should not be a problem for her to enter the top 10. As for herself, she was a little uncertain, but this was not very important to her, because this result had already exceeded her initial expectations. No matter what kind of results they achieved, they would not be a burden. 14th place, Myriad Water City's Shen Duanyu. Shen Duanyu had been staring at the rankings. The moment he saw his name, his face turned ashen. According to his judgment, no matter how bad Bewitching's final result was, it was impossible for him to exceed the top 100. His name had appeared, while Bewitching's name had not. This proved that his overall score was still better than his. This result made him feel even worse than Jiang Haihan winning first place. Duanyu, what should we do? The man at the side looked at Shen Duanyu worriedly. Now the last trace of hope was gone. Shen Duanyu was silent. He angrily glared at the man beside him. Shut up. Seeing this, the man's face turned ugly. There was a trace of anger in his eyes. If it weren't for their past relationship, he would have ignored Shen Duanyu. Even now he was still bossing him around. Chapter 68-53. Seeing that the man beside him had suddenly changed his attitude, Shen Duanyu's face turned ashen. What are you saying to me? What I'm saying is the truth. The man's face was filled with disgust. In the past, you were Master Zhen's disciple, and your status was not ordinary, so I let you have your way. Now that you're nothing, and you've even offended Bewitching, you still dare to treat me with such an attitude. You think too highly of yourself. Shen Duanyu stared blankly at the man, unable to believe that the lackey who usually worshipped him would actually speak to him with such an attitude. However, before he could say anything, the man had already turned around and left. What the hell? I'm not going to serve you anymore. Looking at the man's back as he left, Shen Duanyu's face turned pale. Ever since he had lost his identity, everything had left him. He used to have so many friends, but now, not a single one was left. He was about to face the punishment at the end of the competition, from today onwards. How was he going to face all this? Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze swept across Shen Duanyu's body, although the distance was rather far, but from the changes in their expressions, she could roughly tell what had happened. Hongzhuang, don't be sad. Actually, your results are already very good. Yang Qinxue looked at Bailey Hongzhuang sadly, her warm palm holding her hand. Your profession is a pill master. To be able to achieve such an astonishing result in the first round of the Array Master competition is already very outstanding. Bailey Hongzhuang was a little surprised. She had only paid attention to Shen Duanyu, and did not expect Yang Qinxue to misunderstand her. Turning her eyes, she realized that Yang Lingfeng and the rest were looking at her with the same expression. Yang Han also felt that it was a pity. He had originally thought that with Bailey Hongzhuang's performance in the first 2 rounds, as long as she passed the third round, entering the 100th place should not be a problem. However, so many places had already been announced and Hongzhuang's name still had not appeared. It was obvious where the problem lay. The last round, to a second-grade Array Master, was simply too difficult. Come to think of it, the content that Hongzhuang submitted in the end was probably not much better than a blank paper. Bailey Hongzhuang was amused by everyone's sympathetic and concerned gazes. In fact, if it wasn't for such a strange obstacle in the third round, it would indeed be very difficult for her to enter the top 100. She had once seen this array formation in the array technique left behind by He Shinjun. Even if she didn't have a concrete impression of it, she still understood the basic theory behind it. At that time, Beicheng had studied this array technique with her. At that time, she didn't know much about array techniques, so she mostly listened to Beicheng's analysis. She wrote the answer sheet based on her memory. Judging from the blank expressions of the other array formation masters, her results shouldn't be bad. However, her results hadn't appeared yet, so she was a little puzzled. 10th place, Bailey Hongzhuang of Qingyang City. Hua. When the name on the ranking board was magnified, the entire viewing gallery could not help but erupt into exclamations. Bailey Hongzhuang? Wasn't she 50th place in the second round? How is it possible that her total score is ranked 10th? Chapter 6854. Perhaps Bailey Hongzhuang's performance in the third round was especially good. What are you dreaming about? I heard that she's only a second-tier array master. You can tell from her results in the second round. Even many fourth-tier array masters can't understand the array in the third round. Do you think a second-tier array master can understand it? As his voice fell, the others who originally wanted to argue shut their mouths one after another. Indeed, this was simply impossible. Hongzhuang Yu. Yang Lingfeng was just thinking about how to not let Bailey Hongzhuang down when he suddenly heard these results. His mouth instantly fell open, and the words he wanted to say were stuck in his throat. What about me? You're really too amazing. Yang Lingfeng immediately changed his words. I knew that a genius like you would definitely have outstanding results. Now it seems that I really have great foresight. No one can compare to my judgment, ha ha. Looking at Yang Lingfeng's smug look, Bailey Hongzhuang chose to forget this guy's tearful face. Yang Qinshua's face was also filled with joy. Hongzhuang, I really didn't expect you to achieve such good results. Yang Han and Bai Ziyuan looked at each other. Why did these results seem so unreal? Brother Bai, I'm not seeing things right? Our Qingyang City has entered the top 10? Yang Han looked at Bai Ziyuan. He was worried that he might be hallucinating. Bai Ziyuan was also somewhat dazed, but more than that he was envious. Bailey Hongzhuang had entered the top 10. Then what kind of ranking did Bewitching get? Brother Yang, it's true. Yang Han stared at the dazzling row of words as his eyes reddened slightly. After so many years, everyone thought that it was impossible for Qingyang City to make a comeback. Participating in this year's Array Master competition was the first time he felt that he had completely given up. From the beginning to the end, he didn't have the slightest bit of hope. However, it was precisely this most impossible time that resulted in such a shocking result. Very good. Bewitching lowered his head and looked at the girl beside him, who was happy because of her good results. His eyes were full of gentleness. It's all thanks to your explanation. Otherwise, I wouldn't have any hope. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her head, her white face blooming with a tender and beautiful smile like 10,000 flowers blooming together. That's because my wife is eager to learn. Bewitching's lips curled into a faint smile, and his cold face immediately emitted endless warmth. Yang Lingfeng covered his eyes, feeling that he had been hurt again. After Shen Duanyu saw that Bailey Hongzhuang actually got the 10th place, he was so hungry that he didn't recognize the world anymore. An alchemist had obtained a better ranking than him in the Array Master Grand Competition. Was there a more exaggerated slap to the face than this? On the high platform, the 5 masters in Qin Jian were confused when they saw the results. Bailey girl actually got 10th place? Ning Tian was a little confused. He had always thought that Hongzhuang would be pretty good if she could enter the top 100, because the third stage was just too difficult for her. Thinking about the results of the first 2 rounds, then thinking about the final result, a thought immediately surfaced in his mind. Could it be that the extremely outstanding paper was handed in by Bailey girl? Shen Xing asked in surprise. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.